All right, thank you, everybody. So we'll start off with the food since it's all ready. We'll start off with the elders, obviously. If you need any help, raise your hands. We'll bring you a soup and bannock. Peter O needs help. He raised his hand. Yeah. Then we'll go from there. So let's grab some food. We'll eat for 15, 20 minutes. Then we'll get right into introductions, and we'll get started. 2-minute countdown, 2-minute countdown, and we'll get started. If you haven't got a blue ticket from Trevor, please raise your hand. One-minute call for the smokers. There we go. All right, so we're going to start now. First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to Driftpile Cree Nation. I see a few new faces here, so welcome. We'll do some quick introductions. Yeah, close the door, please. We are on live, just so everybody knows. We are online. Mike is our guy out there taking care of that. Let's start off with council introductions. Far left, I got Councillor Rodney Shalafu, Councillor Caroline Isidore, Councillor Napoleon Collins, Councillor Edward Collins, Councillor Gabe Isidore, Councillor Hank Giroux, Councillor James Ward, and myself, Chief Dwayne Lebecan. Here's our part of our negotiation team. This is not the lawyer firm. He's our advocate for us. His name's Dennis Burnside. He's been working with the nation for quite a long time now. He's also been working with other nations, working on this claim, so he has lots of expertise in this field. He's going to do a presentation. We'll go through the presentation, then we'll go right into questions and answers, and we'll go from there. But we want to go through the full presentation, so we're not stopping and going. So if you have any questions, please just kind of write them down. We'll try to get through the presentation, then we'll go to questions on the floor and online. Okay, with that, thank everybody. I'll hand the mic over to Dennis.
Start with the song. The lights are down. I feel like maybe it's a show. No. Um, Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's awesome to see such a huge turnout. As Chief mentioned, I'm Dennis Burnside, and I'm acting in support of the nation as a negotiator on this file. And I've been involved in this for quite some time. And I really I'm really welcoming the opportunity to be here because what I want to do today, I've had the privilege of being able to be at the negotiation table, see how this unfolds. Chief and Council's been up to date and we've been trying to share information, but I really want everyone to come out of this room knowing as much as I do and knowing what I've seen through the negotiation process. So I'm going to give you an update on where things stand today, but I'm also going to go back a little bit through the history of how we got here so that you can have a good sense of the whole picture. And I want to caveat this with just saying, when you see numbers on the screen and when we're talking about some of the specifics, this is a very live and active negotiation. The numbers are changing, the offer is changing. The numbers that you see on the screen might still change because this is an active negotiation process. And there's some problems that we've seen with Canada's approach that we're still having to work on. So we don't have a final offer today. We don't have a final decision or a recommendation to bring to you, but it's getting very, very advanced. And we want to give you a sense of what this looks like and what to expect. So I'll walk you through all of that. As the Chief mentioned, it's a little bit dense and complicated. So please feel free to keep track of your questions and ask them at the end. But if I'm getting too far ahead and someone's just really confused and needs a clarification, don't be afraid to just put up your hand. And I want to make sure that everyone's fully following along as we go along. So I'm going to start with taking you back to the beginning. This isn't when the actual negotiation started, but this was a letter that was sent from Minister Carolyn Bennett in 2021, August 2021, to every chief across Treaty 8. And that's Saskatchewan, Alberta, and into British Columbia. Every chief in Treaty 8 got this letter. And I can go through the details of it, but I can also summarize it pretty quickly in a nutshell. What this letter says is that the government of Canada recognizes that your treaty annuity payments should have increased. There were 8 Treaty 8 First Nations that had filed claims at this point in time. Driftpile was one of them. And Canada basically got an internal opinion that said, we're going to lose all these claims. We're going to lose in court. We're going to lose these claims. We know that the $5 should have been increasing over time. And as people take us to court, we're going to lose over and over. So let's try something new. Instead of every nation files their claim and we fight this out 630 times across Canada, let's do a innovative voluntary negotiation process where it doesn't matter if you filed a claim or not. We're going to invite every Treaty 8 chief to join in these negotiations and see if we can find a settlement offer regarding the fact that the annuity amounts have never increased. Small caveat on that, it's a little bit more complicated than the $5 and the increases, but I'll walk you through that. And this is what kicked off the process. So it's not a specific claim. It's not a comprehensive claim. They're treating this as what they call a special claim, which basically means there's no real rules around it. It's kind of the process for anything that doesn't fit the usual buckets. And they said to Treaty 8 nations, you can organize yourselves however you want, and we'll fund you for these negotiations, and we'll see if we can come out with a settlement. It'll be a different settlement agreement for each nation, but they're trying to use a common formula and a common approach to negotiating the settlement numbers all across Treaty 8. So DCN's been quite engaged in this from the beginning. And when I speak about the annuities, just for everyone to understand, I'm gonna generally refer to the $5 because it's easy just to pick one and walk you through that. But it's actually 5 heads of damage that we're negotiating a settlement for. So it's a settlement for the provisions of the treaty that talk about a $25 annual annuity to chiefs, a $15 annual annuity for counselors, a $5 annuity for registered members, an annual suit of clothing, and ammunition and twine. All 5 of those, when I'm speaking of the annuities, for the purposes of this, we're talking about all 5 of these and a settlement for those offers for annual payments for all 5 of these things. And just so you know, as I go through the formulas to explain how we've negotiated the numbers, it's the same formula for each. So if I say that the formula says it should go up 2% a year, it applies equally to all of these. So I'm just going to focus on one, and you can just imagine that we're applying the same formula to all 5. But the other kind of complicating element of this is we're negotiating 2 different problems with those 5 heads of damage. So the first one is that these amounts never increased. So it's quite obvious that the spirit and intent of treaty was definitely not so that everyone has enough money to buy a bag of chips today. Canada acknowledges that the amount should have increased. So how much should they have increased, and how much do we owe you for the fact they didn't increase? That's one component of it. The second component of it is that they've missed payments throughout history. There's probably years that people didn't get their annuity payment altogether. So for the purposes of these negotiations, we've negotiated an agreement with Canada that they'll make a blanket assumption that in every year, 25% of all payments in every year to 1899 were missed altogether. So it's the 5 heads of damages. It's a failure to increase them since 1899. And it's an assumption that 25% of payments were missed all through history. And all collectively, these are the damages as part of the Treaty 8 annuities that we're negotiating. This is not touching any other elements of the treaty. It's essentially Canada's in debt to you because these amounts should have been increased. They should have been paying you more from 1899 to 2025. This is to get them paid up to today for what they should have paid, and it's not covering anything else. And I'll talk a little bit about that more because it's not touching the future. It's not touching what happens tomorrow. It's only the past from 1899 to today and what they owe you, and it's not touching any other elements of the treaty. So just so you know, we've got a big team working on this. It's great because Canada has funded the nation to get whatever support they need and participate in this. So I'm helping kind of coordinate the negotiations and reporting to Chief and Council and sitting at the table from Canada, but we needed different types of support. One element is obviously legal. So we're talking about the legal elements of these claims, the legal agreements, the legal releases, all of that. So we do have a law firm that has a lot of experience in constitutional law, treaty negotiations, claim negotiations. That's Borden Ladner Gervais. Another element of this is the financial modeling, and the financial models are actually quite complicated. So we brought on a team of kind of financial whizzes that are not only able to dissect Canada's numbers, we're not just taking Canada at their word when they give us a financial model. They can rip apart and they can rebuild models right from scratch, and they're helping us with the numbers. And then a third element is No History. That's our historical services firm. In my opinion, they're the best in Canada. And they're helping us with the historical research element of this, whether it's respect to the treaty, your nation, your population, history, all of that. So all these folks are working behind the scenes to support your nations in these negotiations. And I will let you know, because I've forgotten to mention this sometimes in the past, and I think it's important. Number one, the nation's not paying out of pocket for any of these people. Everything's paid for by the government. And number two, if there is a settlement offer, nobody is getting a contingency fee. Nobody's getting a success fee. There's no 5%, 10%, anything like that. We're just paying their bills as long as Canada is going to cover it. And when the negotiation ends, that stops. So what exactly are we negotiating? The first is the formula. If we know that the $5 in 1899 should have increased in 1900 and 1901, how much should that have increased by? Should it have gone from $5 to $6, $5 to $20? What model do we use to figure out how much these should have been increasing over the years? So that's one whole sphere of these negotiations. What is the model that we're using? And then the second part of this model is what population is owed that money. So let's just say we all agreed that it was $5 in 1899 and it should have been $6 in 1900. That means everyone in the year 1900 on your membership is owed $1. This is just for illustration. How many was that? Was that 50 people? Was that 70 people? 100 people? So it's about the population history and it's about the amounts owed, really in a nutshell. But it gets more complicated than that. So there's a good and a bad to Canada's approach to negotiations, which is that, hey, they did it voluntarily. They proactively are offering to settle. They're funding your work to settle. And, you know, that's often not something that we see. On the flip side, I'm immediately skeptical when the government does something like that, because does the government ever really do something out of the goodness of their own heart when it comes to something like this? No, you usually have to fight. And so there's a degree of skepticism. And I believe that they've realized the financial burden of all these annuity claims across Canada, and they're trying to go out and get a fair deal, which can work. If we can actually get to a fair deal, it can work. But we also have to be skeptical that they're not trying to undercut you for what you're owed. The other concern was that even before I came on, before we started, I've never seen this before. Usually you file a claim and you negotiate for 50 years and get your claim at the end of it. It takes years and years and years and you get your number. Canada put a number on the table in their very first meeting. They said, hey, we've already come up with a model. We've already looked at your population. We pulled this together, and if you want to skip this whole process, we'll give you, I believe your initial number was around 50 to 55 million. I don't pay too much attention to that because we're obviously not taking their first offer, but they had created a model from the beginning, and they have stuck to a mandate of negotiating within that model, which is frustrating, but it still could lead to a pretty reasonable settlement. So here's how it works. 1899, there's a promise in the treaty. We're going to pay $5 to every member. That number should have gone up by every amount. For Canada, their model is based on inflation. So this $5 should have been growing with the rate of inflation. So it, just as you see today, like last year, a head of lettuce cost this year it costs more. So whatever the annual rate of inflation in Canada was, that's how much the $5 should be going up by. So for Canada, the rate of inflation says that in year one, it should have gone from $5 to $5.15. But they kept paying the $5, which means every year those people were getting underpaid by 15 cents, at least in that first year. Now, if we assume in that first year, 1900, everyone was owed 15 cents, that means you're $1.50 short overall of what they should have paid. 15 cents times 10 population, just to give you an idea of how the population and the model work together. Then it goes, well, what if you had saved that money? Obviously, if you got this money, you might have saved it, you might have invested it, that might have grown in investment interest. So we have to account for that. The fact that it's not only missed, but the money could have been invested. And then we look at, and then we look at that and say, okay, if every person in 1900 was owed 15 cents and it was $1.50, in 1900, when you add it up by inflation, you add the trust fund interest rates, modern dollar values, everyone's owed $1,098. That's kind of how the formula goes in a nutshell. And then it starts to add up. Then you go year two, how many people, how much were they owed, inflation, interest, adding up. So each year we're adding this up and it all collectively leads to the final settlement number. And it adds up quite a bit. Yeah, and the value lost, the value lost on this is in the millions of dollars, the way that this compounds, and especially getting your population right in those early years really adds up when you add 100+ years of interest to it, et cetera. So that's why it's so important to get the population right. So these are some slides that Canada provided to us right away. You know, annuity paid $18.99, $5 was owed, or $5 was owed. We paid the $5 zero. Then it was up by 15 cents inflation, 26, 50, 58 cents, 65. And the amounts increasing each and every year. And if you assume we're multiplying that by a population, then in 1900, it's $1.53 that we're short. It's $2.58, $7.57. Everything keeps growing and compounding. And then you can see how these numbers start to add up. So they owed you for 10 people $1,000 in 1900, 2,000 in 1901, 5,000, 5,000, 8,000. The model goes up and down. So, and this is Canada's model that they presented as a basis for negotiating. So what are we going to do with that? I mean, quite frankly, there were some nations that took it and said, okay, this is the model. What's our number? Let's move forward. But your council hasn't taken that approach. Your council said, we need to dig into this and push back every which way we can. So how much of that have increased? Challenging the financial model, challenging the population numbers, pushing for alternative models. What if inflation isn't the right approach? Pushing on that front, pushing for modernization. And I want to just pause on this. So you know how I mentioned that if they settle with you, they're covered for the amounts they should have paid from 1899 to 2025. What that would mean is if you were to take the settlement offer and ratify it, that means that in 2026, you show up on treaty days, it's $5 again. Nothing in this touches the future. It's actually ridiculous. So if that makes no sense to you, then that means you understand it does make no sense. Initially, when they said they were going to do these negotiations, they said we're going to do both. We're going to figure out what we owe you from the past, and we're going to figure out a model for how this should grow into the future so we don't get into the same predicament. But whether they ran out of money, they ran out of time, they ran out of interest, whatever it was, they backed away from their commitment to negotiate the future, which means that that just remains unresolved, and which means that if you settled up to 2025, your next claim and your next dollar amount starts ticking the next year because it's back to $5. It should be higher. They should be paying you more. So we've been pushing for modernization, and so far they haven't agreed. And all the way along, it's been, well, if we didn't take this, what are our other options? And making sure that we're assessing that and we're preparing for that. So if you don't like where these negotiations are going, these are voluntary. You do have alternatives. So studying that along the way as we go has been the work that's been happening. So there is some good success to report, especially on the financial modeling. So like I said, they had a formula, and I don't want to bore you to death with it, the inflation increasing, but with the team at KPMG, what we did was we said, well, we're not taking your model for granted. We asked them to access their own financial model. We couldn't. So KPMG rebuilt it from scratch for us, and we rebuilt their financial model. And as soon as we did that, we started noticing all sorts of errors. Go figure, the government had bureaucrats that were getting a whole bunch of things wrong. Some things were little. They were using different rounding. Sometimes they rounded to 2 zeros. Sometimes they rounded to 4 zeros. That adds up over time. That adds to a few $1,000, up to $1 million. And we wanted to show Canada that we're serious. We're looking closely at these numbers. So you missed a decimal point here, you missed a decimal point there. I think we took them off guard with that type of work. We also saw inconsistent use of the banned trust fund rates through history. There is a legislated standard for it, and there's different records that are on file. So we went through that and challenged their use of proper banned trust fund rates, which is the interest that should be growing. So that was another win, small wins. But then there was a much bigger win, which is that when our team looked at it, we said, wait a minute, if this model's going up by inflation, and again, when the price of a head of lettuce goes up or whatever it is, and that's how the annuity goes up, what about the 1940s Great Depression? We had deflation, and we looked at their model and we said, you have the annuity going down in multiple years. It's going from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8, back down to 7 to 6 to 5. We said, do you seriously expect us to accept that the annuity should sometimes go down? It shouldn't be increasing each and every year. They don't decrease things when it comes to pensions, veterans pensions, benefits. So why would you ever apply this to First Nations? So that was a huge one. They accepted all of our recommendations on this, which they didn't do the deflation exactly the way we wanted. We wanted everything to hold in a deflation year. And then as soon as inflation came back, it starts rising. They wait to increase it till it catches back up. So it wasn't exactly what we wanted. If they did our model, this would have actually been quite higher. But what it meant was that every offer across Canada increased by, or across Treaty 8, increased by between 10 and 20%, including Driftpile's offers. So that first offer in the 50, 55 million range, immediately we reapplied this model and we shot it up. We also did push on alternative models. So I had KPMG build, what if it went up by the GDP of the land, of the treaty area? What if it went up by the way incomes rose in the land? What if it went up by resource revenue extraction? And then we did another GDP model where we removed imports and exports because it's a little uneven because we didn't really have imports and exports in a lot of years. Anyways, what the point of this is to let you know, we have built 4 alternative models for increasing the annuities. You own these as a nation now. These are your models, which you can use going forward. And because that modernization discussion hasn't happened yet, I think it's a good thing that we have those, because these are things to put on the table that are still open for discussion for how do we grow this going forward. So the way you settle the past doesn't necessarily dictate how you'll settle this going forward. And this is just a letter, so just a nod to your chief and council and the work they did. They actually organized some of the only meetings amongst themselves with other Treaty 8 nations to share information about how we were pushing on these models so we could team up and push Canada. So this was a letter that went out to every nation that said, following the receipt of invaluable evidence presented by experts hired by Treaty 8 nations, Canada has modified its approach to calculating compensation for historical losses. So they took our model corrections and they applied it all across the board to every Treaty 8 First Nation. So all that said, at the end of all that, as we thought we were getting close to the end of the process, as you add up all those numbers over multiple years, this is the number that we had landed on a few months ago. It's not the number today. It's the number that we had landed on as of a few months ago. And that's, again, taking all the 5 heads of damage, all the population figures for each year, applying the whole model, all the model corrections. It got us up from the 50s to the 70s. So some success. We obviously shoot higher. It's a negotiation. So they come here, we shoot there, and we meet somewhere in the middle. But that was some progress. But one of the reasons that I'm here today to tell you we don't have an offer to settle on yet, or that is even worth bringing to you yet, is because some new things have emerged in the last few months. So as I mentioned, the population each year is important, and even finding 10 people that are missed adds up a whole lot over 100 years. So Canada was overestimating your population from 1899 to 1915. Earlier in those years, when we look at the Annuity pay list, they were showing the total population of the Kinuseo band. So there was other nations lumped into your population in the early years. We knew that Canada made that mistake. I wasn't going to tell them. We knew, but they were overestimating your population. As we got closer to a settlement and started going through the more serious legal work, they realized that they were over evaluating your population from 1899 to 1915. When we looked at 1915 to 2025, again, we didn't assume that any numbers we got from Canada were accurate. Even if they had a pay list, they're often wrong. So we were doing our own independent validation of the pay list. But what we noticed from 1915 to 2025 was they were off by 5 here, 10 here, 15 here potentially. But because they so overcompensated you might have had 5 different nations looped into your population in the early years. It wasn't worth it to challenge their whole population model because you came out further ahead. But now that they did this, they came back to us and said, hey, we overcompensated you in those early years. We need to reduce your offer based on that. And now I've gone back and said, okay, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to take a harder look at all your numbers in all the other years, because I was letting it slide that there was some issues, or, we weren't really going to push them on that because we saw what a big mistake they were making. But now we have to go back and look at every year from 1899 to 2025 with a fine-tooth comb. So that work's ongoing. Our historical firm has just put in a bunch of new requests to library and archives, et cetera. It's not going to take a ton of time, but they've just showed up and cut your population numbers, and we're not just going to take that and say, okay, fair enough. We're going to go and look into that. You can see here how it looks. So this is Canada's actual numbers, and you can see they're kind of a mess. So in 1899, they had 246 for Driftpile, 258, goes up to 325, then it goes down and up, then down in 1910. It's kind of a mess. When we did our own independent analysis, we thought these were closer to your accurate numbers. So 89 in 1901 compared to 246. So you can see why we didn't challenge it right away, because these numbers were way higher. So we were like, sure, we'll use these ones, way higher. But now, again, that they've realized their mistake, it means we have to go push them harder on the rest of your population data. They also were making a second mistake all the way along, which we knew about. DCN actually filed a claim on ammunition and twine. A relatively small claim. It was settled for, I think, $650,000. But that was because there were payments missed altogether on the ammunition and twine from, I think it was 1899 to 1952 in that settlement claim. Again, for like 2 years, their negotiators didn't pick up on it. So we weren't going to tell them, but they figured it out at the end. They said, hey, we already settled for 650,000. So we have to cut that down from your settlement offer as well. So they've noticed their 2 mistakes. which we were hoping they wouldn't notice, but they figured out. And I have to look into a third thing now as a result of this. And I don't have the answers for you on this, but remember that there's also an annuity payment for chiefs and councillors. The number of chiefs and councillors is roughly based on your population, although there's some provisions in the Indian Act, there's some provisions in the treaty, and there's also what actually happened on chiefs and councillors. So when we looked at 1899 and the early years, Canada was using in their population possible number recorded. Yeah, the number in Canada's calculations 333,444. So you can see in all these early years, there is actually only one DCN councillor reported on the pay list, but they were using 3 or 4. And if you look at the treaty provisions of the Indian Act provisions, it was actually less. So here again, your councillors were more. Now I don't know for sure if because they've reduced your population, they've also reduced these councillor numbers. They just basically said to me, we've noticed our mistake. We've made some edits. Here's our number. And I said, can you show me your math and how you used it? They still have not actually gotten back to me in a few months now to show me how this looks. So I need to also see if this population reduction has affected the chief and councillor numbers that they've used each year. And just for full transparency, they haven't showed us how they've reduced their numbers. And so we're pushing them and we're not going to move forward until they do. But originally their numbers were much higher. So Canada was using 6, 6, 7, 7, 7 in all these years when other analysis might have led to 4 or 5. So I'm hoping that didn't change. And you can see on this chart, the purple line is Canada's estimate of your councillors. By the way, they've provided no rationale for how they estimated your numbers, period. 0. I was looking all day today. If I missed something, they've never provided it. So the pink line is theirs. So generally speaking, for most of your history, it's higher than the actual recorded lists. It's higher than if we did the math by Indian Act provisions, and it's higher than if we did the math by treaty provisions. And then it eventually starts to model out, but you gain so much here. Again, it's good the way Canada has done the numbers for this. So now, because of these reductions that they've done in your early population and the ammunition and twine, this is the latest updated number. Not a huge reduction. We're at 70.9 million. They reduce your population. They cut out that ammunition and twine element, and it's 67 and change $million is the offer on the table today, or at least that's the most active number that Canada has said in negotiations that they would entertain for a settlement on this. If you took an alternative approach, and again, I want to be transparent with you all, there are some that say, hey, maybe we could go a different path, but I do want to let you know, and because there was a settlement in Ontario that they got quite a bit of money on this, that treaty was very different. If you went, your alternative, if you don't take the settlement, I guess one alternative is do nothing and wait and see if the world changes for 10 or 20 years or whatever. You don't have to settle anything, but then it's an opportunity cost because this money can be invested and grown, so you have to weigh that. If you want to go an alternative route, you basically have to sue Canada. If you sue Canada, I've seen their legal filings for other nations that have sued them. They will come right out the gate and their starting position will be, it was $5. It should have always been $5. It should have never grown. You got to prove everything in court. So you would have to, number one, prove a clear spirit and intent of the treaty, that there was an agreement that it should have increased at all. So everyone knows that it should have increased, but you're going to have to go through oral history, records, interviews, all of that for Treaty 8-wide history to show that there was an intent for it to grow, period. Then you have to do the assessment to go and say there was also an intent. Now that we've won that first legal test, now we're going to prove that there was an assumption that the model should have grown by a certain amount, and everyone agreed on that too. And for that to be worthwhile, you have to prove that there was a agreement for a better model than the inflationary model that Canada's had. Then there's a number of things that Canada's done in this negotiation that is not a given if you went to court. So right now there's mix-ups between different populations in certain years. So they're not making you go through your list every year and prove that someone's on yours that might have been on you know, a Sawridge list or whatever it is. If there's some overlap, they just overlook that and double pay. If you go to court, they're going to be like, hey, this person was paid on this list. You're going to end up having to apportion amongst other nations who are also settling it. So that's going to be a complicated process. Getting your population recognized to your liking, not based on Canada's list, et cetera. So all that to say, this is a multi-year, multi-million-dollar legal fight, likely best fought with multiple nations. And it's not guaranteed that you would come out with a model necessarily that's better than the inflationary model. To date, I have not seen a firm legal argument presented to me that tackles all 5 of these claims. I've met with 16 or 17 different lawyers and negotiation groups. There's a couple that think that you could build the argument, and fair enough, that there was a different intent to grow it by something different than inflation, but it's a huge legal case as your alternative. And again, that's the millions of dollars that it costs to fight that case. And money makes money. So if you had 10 million in your pocket this year as a nation, you turn 10 to 20, you turn 20 to 40, it's got that potential. So you have the year's lost due. So I'm not here to recommend one way or another. At the end of the day, I'm just here to push Canada in this as far as we can push them. And then we'll put that decision to you, to your council, and to your community to make the decision. But that's the alternative route if you were to turn this down once it gets to the end. So what do we have to do right now, and why do I not have a formal offer to bring to you today for decision and recommendation? We have to thoroughly reassess all the population data, and we're considering either a literature kind of review report, which is faster, or we could do a full genealogical history, and we could really interview everyone and do a full genealogical history. The cost and time of that versus, you know, what we think it would turn up. So we're just trying to assess, do we think we would get a lot more people if we did that work? So that's ongoing. I have to verify Canada's settlement reductions. I'm not just going to take their word for it that they did the math right and it went from 70 to 67 and they did it all correctly. So we have to dissect that. There's another issue, is that there's multiple lists that we use here. We have treaty pay lists, we have registration lists, we have membership lists, we have your general list. These are all different. It's not exactly clear to us, this settlement amount, who all is it covering? And is it just the population? Is it covering the overall generalist? Would you be expected to pay out through your settlement people that are on the generalist? If not, how would we work through that process? But we're not able to even do that assessment yet because we don't have the final population figures. So council signed a BCR for me about a month ago that allows us to access some of the records for ourselves so that we don't have to wait for Canada to sort this all out. So we're working through that. Then we have to review the legal agreement, because it's one thing for Canada to say we're not affecting your other treaty rights, et cetera. We have to look at the legal language and make sure it's airtight, that you're not letting them go from anything other than the money owed for these strict years, and you're not getting anything else that could take away from your treaty rights as a result of it. So it's just the legal work of going through the agreement. And there's some work to do if we do get an offer that council thinks is adequate to bring forward to you. Then there's a discussion about how are we going to set out how that is going to be distributed. And it's important, you know, I know there was cows and plows and everyone's heard of that and knows about how that played out. An important element of this is that a lot of the compensation that's coming is for people in the past. It's for people that lived from 1900 to 1950 that didn't get their annuity, and they're calculated in your offer. So if we were to take, like, just to roughly, if we were to take Canada's 67 or 70 million-ish offer, and we were to then pay it back out to everyone kind of backwards, the way it was constructed, it would have about 40 to 50 million of the offer getting paid out. And then the rest would be money that's compensating for other people, which you could invest, you could put into a trust, you could do different things with that. Or, I mean, that's a decision for you. Ultimately, the settlement offers DCNs and you'll decide what to do with it. But there's no restrictions on how you would like to do it, but you would have some decisions to make in terms of not only taking the offer and bringing it to a vote, but how you want to distribute that. So it may seem like a lot of work. I actually don't think most of the heavy lifting in this is done. Most of this, I think, to me, can be done in a couple of months, unless we have to do a full genealogical process. That would take a little bit longer if that's worth it. But I suspect that I should be able to come back to you in not too long. Just so you know, right now with the election, we're paused anyways, because we have an election. I was a little worried if the Conservatives come in, would they back away from this? It's still a little bit unclear, but right now it doesn't look like they're going to be getting in. We don't know that for sure. But I don't think we're too far away from working through these and being able to come back to you and at least say this is the most we can get. And that's the end of this process. When we can say to you, this is the most we can get from this process. What do you think? This is just some of the language if anyone wants it. By the way, I'm sorry, I should have printed some of these before I came. I'm going to email it to the office. If anyone wants these slides, they'll print some copies and you can come by the office and pick them up. There's no secrets here. This is your information. And it's just got some of the language in the draft legal release for you. And if you did take it, so if I did come back in a month or two, hopefully if we're able to move really quickly and I said, this is the best offer that we have, and the nation wanted to move it forward, it's about a 90-day process, give or take, from that point forward. So council would pass a BCR, tentatively accepting the offer, and they would initial every page of the settlement agreement. Then we put it to a ratification vote for the membership. The vote has to pass by 50% or 50% plus one, but the total number of people that vote in favor has to be at least 25% of your population. That's the general approach. So you have to get a good turnout. It's not a crazy turnout, but like people will have to show up to get this vote passed, but we would have to set up that ratification vote, and then we would have to confirm your settlement preferences. So how do you plan to either pay out and or invest it? And the question that would come to you as members, you would actually get two questions. It would be number one, do you approve of this settlement offer? And number two, do you approve of this approach for paying it out? And we can create different models for you. So what we've generally been recommending as a starting point is an amount by like 10-year age brackets. So everyone 0 to 10 is this amount, everyone 10 to 20 is this amount, 20 to 30, etc. But we can play around with different models depending on what the preferences are. One way or another, that's got to go to you all as a vote as well to decide on that. So work to do, steps ahead. That's the whole last few years in a nutshell and the status of where we're at. So hopefully that was a good overview and it wasn't too dense, but I will pause there. Anyone can feel free to make comments and I can answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, I got a couple comments. Just to be clear, there is no treaty infringement on this. This is for the $5 that they never grew. So there's been question out there, are we going to be, giving up a treaty right? No, we're not. We made that clear this time around. Second thing, there is going to be a future claim on going forward. That will have to probably come after this, like Dennis said. We will be negotiating up to 2025, but the $5 going forward in the future is going to have to be another claim. Like it should be worth, $300 to $400 every treaty day at today's numbers. What's $5 worth today versus $18.99? But again, I just want to make that clear. That's probably going to be another future claim that we're going to have to do. So I got Hank's got some comments.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the elder for doing the prayer and thank everyone for being here. For me, the word settlement, I don't like that. It should be a compensation because I don't want our nation to step into something that what the government's going to put in their indemnity clauses. Just for that. And the other one is my colleague and I were talking in 1919, we had the Spanish flu pandemic. Just to maybe you need to check out the numbers there too.
Yeah.
And we also have a document in our consultation office, I don't know, or maybe the membership has, but we were given documents from the church listing a bunch of band members that were baptized and deceased. And for me, a prime example is I didn't know. I'm 67 now. I didn't know that I had 6 other uncles till I read that document. That my dad had 6 other siblings.
Yeah. So, and thanks for bringing that up. And Councilwoman Isidore also reminded me of it. So I should have mentioned this as well. The term settlement offer is not really appropriate. It's a compensation payment Really, it's a compensation offer. So I have let our legal team know that we'd like to try to change the script on this and use that type of terminology. It's the same thing that the government uses, terms like extinguishment, seed surrender, settlement, those types of words. So we haven't got to the drafting of your legal agreement yet because we haven't resolved the negotiation. But when we go into that, we're going to push to see if we can do something new with the terminology. And I think that's a great recommendation. And as far as populations, I have two proposals for you all as chief and council. One's like the bigger research project on the population. One's a smaller, but they'll walk you through the different sources that they'll go through.
Yeah.
So Hank, if you've got knowledge of places that they should be looking and you don't see it in there, let's make sure that we capture that.
Just a quick comment before we go to the people. We did tell Dennis we want to explore all avenues before we even consider bringing an offer to the people to accept or not. So we do agree with doing all our due diligence. We did some, but there's more we could definitely do, and that's what we're doing now. We are one of the leading nations from Treaty 8 right now. As far as I know, Treaty 8 hasn't signed any of this, and they're kind of watching us because we are going to set the standards once we accept something. So we do want to make sure it's right, and we do all our research, and we get as much as possible for the people. That's kind of our goal.
Thank you, Chief. I do have a few questions I'd like to put forth. Number one, when we were compensated for the cows and plows, I understand that that was distributed to the people and also to Chief and Council. I'm going to say Chief and Council because those are the ones that were using the extra money, not the people of the band, right? Now, being a treaty annuity compensation, it means it's entitled to each and every band member, not a portion of the money going to the people and a portion going to Chief and Council. So that's one of the things that I do. I believe it is, yes, a full payout is in need of because it's a treaty annuity compensation for the band members. It does not say partial payment to band members, partial payment to the council or to the band. So anyway, the other thing I have is you were talking about ratification of two funding proposals. So which one are we looking at? Are we looking at the 70 million or the 67 million?
667 is the latest offer, but like I said at the beginning, it's active. It was 70. It's been reduced, but we're going to see if we can push it back up. So the 67 million number that was on the screen, that's the current offer. If we were to stop everything now and take what Canada's offering, that's where they sit today.
Now, you were talking about compensating band members. So we do have two lists. We have the band member list, we have a general list. So who is being compensated? Is it going to be the whole, the band and the general list, or is it just for the band member, the full band members?
Yeah. So again, and yeah, and please don't shoot the messenger on this because I hate giving an answer like this. But Canada hasn't provided us the full breakdown of how they've done it, so we're working to force open their records so we can see it. I believe that this offer may be for the entire membership list and general list. If that's the case, and we do confirm that, you would have a choice to make, which is to take it and would you pay that out to the general list, or would you just remove that from the offer and leave that to be Canada's problem, or would we do something else with it? But we don't know yet to know exactly how many individuals may or may not be included in the formula to add this up that are on your general list and not on your membership list. We're trying to get council that exact accurate number. I think we're a few weeks away, pretty close, but we don't have the number right now. I suspect there are general list members as part of the formula that adds up to that number though.
You also alluded to the compensation factor of having individuals like from 0 to 10 in age. They'll be compensated for that portion, and the older you get, you'll get more. Right? Is that what I'm understanding?
It's because again, so the model is based on literally looking at your population each year, what they were owed, and everyone in their lifetimes getting compensated for what they didn't have. So if you were to pay everyone out today based on everyone's amount owed that didn't happen, it would be less for someone who's been alive for 10 years than someone who's been alive for 80 years. So we've done a few hypothetical models. It's just for illustration, like, hey, if you wanted to do it this way, this is how you could break it down by 10-year increments. But we could do a lot of different things with that. It's not a decision yet. It's just it's a starting point to look at how you might do the payout. And so we built a couple initial models on that front.
Well, it's kind of a moot point in terms of how you're going to compensate that, because I've been living, I'm older than Hank. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I am a little older than Hank. He's very old, right? So, so he's going to get less than me, I think. And then Dwayne is going to get less than me. So I believe that's how we should look at compensating the individual band members, because we did go through the process of from day one and the first year of getting $5 and to how old we are. And my last question is, I'm hoping that once the negotiation is in place, that the people are thought about, not about chief and council. Thank you.
Yeah. And chief, if you don't mind, so those are great comments. I appreciate it. So they're all taken, 100%. Just for your food for thought, because I'm hearing your comment about it's the people's compensation and it's not for council. So some of the things that you'll have to make a decision on are, like, it's one thing to look at someone that was alive from 1900 to 1950, that they're part of the settlement too, and where does that money go? That's one thing. But even think about today, if you've had someone recently passed, even the last 5 years, they're included in your model. So does that money go into a community investment? Does that go out to the individual? Who would that money go to? So it is an element. It's not for me to tell you what to do with that. That's your nation's right to do, but it's something to think about in terms of the people who are not with you today, who are part of the compensation offer, and what happens with that money. It's totally your choice as a nation what to do with it. But just so you know that's a part of the models, is that there are people that aren't with us that are being compensated here, and it's your choice what you'll do with those funds.
So right now, just a little more comment to that. So right now, what the government is offering is just a lump sum. They're saying, here's what we're offering. You guys figure it out how you guys are going to distribute it. And that's the big question. How do we, first of all, I want to clear up, it's not chief and council's money. Get that clear. It's the band's money. Second is the biggest issue is the people that passed on. Like, who gets that money? Is it the child, or is the family arguing? Are they allowed? Like, it's gonna make a real messy situation. But we are working on options. Nothing's completed yet, but we are going to bring options of how to pay it out. We did see a couple drafts from other nations. They did the age thing as well. Like 0 to 10, in my mind, should get something. 10 to 20 get something. 20 to 30, it should be going up, because the older you are, you should be getting more, because it was you that missed out the $5 increase back then. But again, that's all draft right now. We do have to bring that to the table. But again, this offer, the government just saying, here, you guys do what you want. You guys figure out that mess. And the verbal thing, they verbally told us this does include the general list. So that's another thing. We did ask, could we exclude the general list or leave it with Canada, and the general list could, apply to Canada for that money? That's possibly another option. They said they would look into that as well. But either that, or we just take it all and we give everybody full membership and the general list, we do a payout. That's the way I understood it when we talked to the government of Canada. Robbie, sorry, Teresa.
Couple of things. I just want to touch on what Hank is saying in terms of the that pandemic that took many of our people. I think that has to be factored in, because one of the stories that I heard from my mom is that her dad passed away, my mushroom, burying people, and from what I understand, he lost count of how many people that he had to bury, and then he got taken by that flu as well. So that's, I think, an important factor when we're determining what the population was at that point in time. The other comment I want to make is when I was at Treaty 8, there has been documentation there, and I remember a specific document that was sent to Indian Affairs asking for these specific items that were promised in the treaty, and they were still waiting for them. I think that perhaps those documents will have, and that was written by our people. That particular one was written by one of our members that signed a treaty. Wasn't my Mushum, my Japan. It was another member that signed because he put his name in syllabics. So I knew that was a document that our people did. That is another source of information that I think needs to be investigated, because there could be if we go to court to prove that it should have been increased, there may be something in there that would indicate that there should have been an increase under his understanding when he wrote that letter. So that was another source that I think is important. The other one is when I was reviewing the annuity payments were missing many children, because at the time they were being taken into residential school, parents were hiding their children, and so they weren't collecting for them. So I think that's another factor that has to be given. And I know that one of the people that I worked with said her grandparents hid her for 4 years so she wouldn't have to go to residential school. So those numbers are not included in those annuity payments. So I'm just suggesting alternatives in terms of looking at what numbers did we really have? What was our population? And the other thing, of course, is like you were saying, the genealogy. There has been a genealogy that was done for Driftpile. Tapping into that as well and taking a look at that, because it's been done, could help find more information that is necessary to determine our population. So those are the couple of things that I wanted to suggest in terms of, it sounds like we're doing more research, and my recommendation is that you take a look at those options in terms of our population and what the real intent was.
I'm glad
Yeah,
you said
that
the
is
mic.
we do want to look at the genealogy, possibly do more research on that one. We know we have the one we have right now. It is okay, but it's not the full picture as well. We definitely need to do more research on that to make that the full picture.
And I took some notes, but I'll try to grab you before you leave the room so I can make sure I have a couple questions for you on how to track down some of this stuff. But thank you. I took notes on what you mentioned, and we'll follow up.
Hey, Dennis, this is for you. You stated earlier that 25 to 50% of the community's got to vote on how much we're going to be distributed. Is that going to be in writing for us, for the community, for our band members?
Yeah. So that's Canada's requirement. So they're saying if we're going to give you this offer, it has to pass the vote. It has to be a majority in favor, and the total number of those who vote has to be at least equal to 25% of your membership. So that's Canada's formula. That'll be included in the draft of the settlement agreement, and then there will be a formal there will be a formal trust account agreement. Even if it's 100% payout, you'll have an account with the rules of how that goes out, and you will get the 2 questions, which will be number 1, do you accept the offer? And number 2, this is how it's proposed to be distributed. Do you agree with both? So it'd be a vote on both questions. 50% is a passed vote, but that population needs to be 25% of your overall membership.
Perfect. One more question. Okay, if we're settling on the 67 million, if we were to get that today, let's just throw a rough number out. How much would each individual benefit from that? How much would they get? Just a rough number, even.
Yeah, I can give you an Are you comfortable if I give some
estimates?
Just
rough number, even, ballpark it.
Yeah. So and don't quote me on it exactly, because I'll have to look at some of the spreadsheets, because we've been scenarioing it out. But if you took this settlement and you said everyone who's alive today is going to get paid for their years of not getting the annuity, your population's actually risen a lot more recently. So people alive today eat up a big chunk of it. So it's 40 to 50 million of that is covering people that are alive today, and then that would be distributed. I believe the model would see kind of from the low end, a child in the 2,500 to 5,000 range of a, 0 to 5 or 0 to 10-year-old child. And if you were like 90 to 100 years old, it'd be closer to 100,000. So that's the scope if you were to break it out by year. So that would mean that people in the middle, 30, 40, 50, you're in the 30, 40, 50 range, I believe. But please don't get really mad at me if I'm not exactly accurate, but that's my recollection, is that it would be a huge chunk of this. There'd only be about 15 and change left over if you paid it out by deconstructing the way it was constructed. And if you paid it out by age brackets, and it would be somewhere in the 2 to 5,000 at the low end, 90 to 100,000 if you were like 90 years old. And then it kind of escalates for everyone in between there. Yeah. Yeah.
Just gonna say, Driftball, are you accepting the 67 million? That's all they care about. They don't care how it's broken up.
There's a question I'd like to ask. Like, okay, we lost my mom here May the 8th, and it's gonna be in May the 8th will be a year, and we'd like to know, are you guys gonna give us my mom's money for us family so we can buy headstones for my mom and my dad? It would be nice to at least to honor my family. It hurts for us, especially me. I spend a lot of time with my mom, and it's and whoever, like my niece Virginia, she lost her daughter too here on the 14th. It'll be a year. It is a year, and she left 3 kids behind. What's gonna happen to them? Like, are you guys gonna help my niece buy a headstone for her too? It would be nice for the kids would at least get the money for for school, for her supporting the kids. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but we'd love to have a few dollars from my mom. Mom supported us from years. Now it's our turn to help, buy those headstones for my dad and my mom. I thought I'd say that.
And I think they were talking about, like, to your question, they were saying that, I'm pretty sure I understood this right, that, part of the one that passed will actually accumulate some dollars. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, like they're factored into it, and you could choose as a nation to do whatever you would like with those funds. So you could pay out everyone with that extra money. Again, it adds up for those passed. It adds up to 10, let's say 10 to 20 million, because I don't want to be a part of it. So that could be invested to grow and turn into 20, 30, 40, 50 million, or that can be paid out, invested in your dev, whatever you want to do with it. It's totally up to you. So there would be options. Yeah.
Once we figure out a formula, we'll know exactly how much is left. Like once we figure out the 0 to 10, if that's the route that you guys choose, then we'll know, say, okay, our payout for our current living people is going to be 50 million. We got 20 million left. How do you guys want to do it? Like I said, it's going to be the death part is a little bit hard. That's a gray area, because there is families that are fight, You know, when it comes down to money, like we've seen it when someone passes on, like we don't want to cause friction amongst the families too. So we got to kind of figure out a good way. And that's a good idea. Maybe we say we're going to take 10 million and buy headstones for everybody that doesn't have. We'll be open to that, but we're not at that stage yet. That is a little bit of a gray area that we definitely have to put some thought behind it. That's all. Yeah, I got Lori and Crystal. Oh, sorry. Lori and Barbara. Oh, Rose. Hey, Rose, go ahead.
Just a suggestion.
Hello. Hi. You know what? This money that you're talking about today, I'm hoping that the money's okay. I mean, if people want money, that's fine. I'm not worried about that. But I'm worried about our land that we have. We cannot sell our land anymore. So if you're going to get lots of money, that's a good thing. But don't sell out with our money. I just want the chief and council to know that because it's important. Thank you.
Okay, I got Lori, then I got Marlene. Go ahead, Lori.
I guess just a suggestion, because you guys were talking about the money, maybe do a quick questionnaire on what the actual band members want or what they would think would help the families with deceased. Yeah, there's a lot of families arguing when it comes to money, but to kind of come to an agreement straight across the board where everybody just votes. So then, you know, if you didn't vote, you miss out, but at least vote on something that's neutral.
Can you hear me? Thanks, Chief Dwayne. Yeah, my hats are off to you guys after this. But yeah, I understand what you said earlier, Dwayne, Chief Dwayne, and all of you, when you mentioned about right now, this is a settlement, and then we're going to look at the yearly. But I understand more clearly when you have to really, really be careful at looking at the yearly now as well when you do the settlement. Because this, I was looking on Grandpa Google here. For 1 acre of land in 1889 was cost of $2. Today, 2021, 2023 is $33,900, so $4,000 for 1 acre of land. So we should still be able to buy that today. Get 1 acre of land out of the 25% of the $5 that's supposed to be yearly. So that's $4,000 per year with only 25% of the $5 in 1889. So that is very prudent information that I wanted to share. Yeah, I'm a little shaky, I'm a little nervous, but I find that very, very, very solid information, even though it's just Grandpa Google, because that's looking every year. And I am also the product of a granddaughter of a band member who used to live on the land here in Driftpile that fled to protect his children from the Indian agent. So really, we should all stand together. And perhaps this is just a mere suggestion to the chief and council. When you go to the government, they've caused division enough. Why can't we stand together now? So enough of that different list of band members, because in the end, my blood is still the same than of your guys's. Now let's stop fighting. That's exactly what the government wants. And then maybe if we stand together collectively, then we can get more than the $4,000 a year. Thank you.
Hi there. Good day, my brothers and sisters. As a First Nation people, we're second class to the world. And with this unity money, how do we calculate that population? Because since 1899 to say roughly 1936, we're all under Soviet's ban. We're all under one ban until we separated in 1936. From 1936, we became the Driftpile First Nation band. And Dennis, with you, the government's paying you, not our band, right? So,
Correct.
what kind of offer are you getting from the government to settle at a very low cost for our people? You know, because $67,000 is a joke and a slap to the face to all our people. Since 1899, there's a woman named Cheryl Jones from Manitoba, from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And she came up with this issue about 8 years ago. And the way that the Annuity money works out is how the property, land, houses, everything. This is how that money rate rises up each time. And we haven't risen in 125 years. And we should be going after back pay, not a settlement. A settlement, we lose stuff. We lose our land. We lose part of our treaty like our cows and plows. It should never be a settlement at all. It should be a back pay for all our people, even the ones that we lost. And you know, like it's tough to, you know, like Ontario, the Robinson Huron, they settled for $10 billion with 21 bands. $10 billion. And we're settling for a lousy $67 million. There's billions and billions of dollars that sit in Quebec. If that money wasn't in Quebec, there would be no Indian affairs in Quebec. And we are dealing with the people that we signed our treaty with was the Queen, the England. We never signed it with the Canadian government. The Canadian government are second-class people to England. England controls what our First Nation people go by. They listen to the king now because the queen is gone. When you go to Ottawa and you look at the Senate building, there's 105 senates that sit on those chairs, and they're the ones that pass all the bills. The Attorney General, she's a First Nation woman who works for the king. She doesn't work for the government. She has the final say on everything on all these bills. The Senate cannot outvote her at all. And with this unity money, like we really need to look at it and look at the process of how Cheryl Jones, maybe get a hold of her, talk to her, and see how she came up with these numbers that she has. Because the number that she has for the sanitary money is $5,000 a year, not $5 a year. Thank you very much.
And
Okay, could we have a quick smoke break while some of our elders are getting Nancy? And we'll do some door prize draws. Brittany will take care of that. If anybody didn't get a blue ticket, please see Brittany before the door prizes start.
So our first ticket. Stay inside. Wait for your smoke. First ticket, last three numbers, 597. 597. Kayla one? Those are mints. My next ticket. Last three numbers, 612. 612. Yeah. Yep. My next ticket, last three numbers, 606. Who? Sauce? No, you gotta take what you get. There, this is. My next ticket number. Last three numbers, 631. 631. 631. My next ticket. Last three numbers, 645. 645. So I'm going to pull one more card, and it's going to be for a gift card, a $50 Visa. Huh? And then we'll hold off till the end to pull some more. My last three numbers, 582. 582. For a $50 Visa. 582. Hey, everybody, we're going to do a couple more door prizes. It will be for
All right, we'll
one
get
of the lunch
started.
kits.
One more door prize and we'll get started.
589. Yeah,
589. There you go.
Are you? We'll just do them all.
Six, 4, 3. 6, 4, 3. Oh, Paige, way in the back. How much you got? Okay. 662. 662. A little girl. Come on up. Yeah, we'll do them all. We still got some more. We got about 4 or 5 more. 580. 580. Oh, Archie Bunker. Here. How's the bowl? I can't reach. 594. 594. Shirley. Well, hello, Eleanor. Never seen you for a while. Archie Bunker, yeah. 604. 604. Mikey. Here, I'm just gonna hold this. Just tell me when we're on the last one. 562. 562. Shauna. Here's a 7. 637. 637. Okay. Mikey's. 637. Did we got that one? Oh, Francis. 592. 592. Kevin. 650. 650. 65. Oh, Noella. 569. 569. Lavernsky. 605. 605. Watch you. Okay. 652. 652. 652. Mouse. 577. 577. 615. 615. Oh, Pedro. Pedro, yeah. 626. 626. I'm trying. Oh, wait, Calvin. 626. What do we got? $50 Walmart card coming up. 634. 634. 634. That you, Rod? Rodney. Next one is beaded earrings. 651. 651. Evangeline. $50 Boston Pizza. 574. 574. A $50 Tim Hortons. 618. 618. 618. Going once. 618. Going twice. 618. Gone. Redraw. 572. Ah, Ralphie. And the last one is a $50 winner card. Winners. 628. 628. Ah, gave her. All right, we'll go back to some questions. Dennis looking a little bored up there, so hopefully you remember some of your questions. We'll go back to the floor. If there's none there, then we'll go back online, but we'll go to the floor first. Any questions on the floor? Crystal.
And just while we're waiting, Councilwoman Isidore, she wanted me to clarify on me and getting paid. So I do not get paid by the government. The government funds your chief and council to negotiate. They hire whoever they want. So they're my boss and they decide if they're going to pay me or not. And so far they're liking what I'm doing, but I report to them. And so I'm not getting paid by the government. I have no involvement with them. I'm working for chief and council. And that goes for everyone else that's a part of this as well. They work for your nation and your council.
Hi. So my question is, once you guys go back to the drawing board and then review the numbers again and everything like that, what is the timeline once it comes to like the nation vote of when any nation member could actually expect on seeing a payout? That's the first question. My second question is, if we went from 70 million and then they reviewed a bunch of like the numbers again and then it decreased to 67, is there a possibility that if we don't take anything now, is that number still able to decrease again?
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, the government could show up at any point in time and say we've uncovered something new. At this point, I don't know what else they could find based on their model, but that's possible. It's also possible we do our own research and we find out that the population numbers our research turns up are lower than theirs versus the numbers that they have. So we're trying to do that assessment right now to make sure that we know. We're not going to do all this work and then decrease our own offer. That's obviously would be a strategic error in negotiations if we were to do that. So yeah, but I don't think there's much more. The areas they decreased, we've known the entire time they were getting wrong. They just finally clued in and we were hoping they wouldn't. So I would be surprised if there was something else that brought it back down, but we did get them up. Remember too, we started in the 50s, it went up to the 70s and then it dipped down with these recent changes. As far as the timelines, once you have a number that is agreeable, that's acceptable to you, if it is at all, then that whole process, the actual ratification process, is about a 3-month give or take process between drawing up the trust agreement, drawing up the legal agreements, going through the initialing, putting the question out to members, posting it for a number of days, executing the ratification vote. It's probably about a 3-month process. And then it wouldn't take too long for after that to actually roll out the funds. The funds will transfer and we just have to distribute it based on what was ever in the trust agreement that you voted on.
Yeah. And just for FYI, their first offer is around the 65 million. When we did our counter offer, we were at 120 million. We shot for the moon. Then they come back and said, no, we can't pay you guys 120. Here's our offer of 70 million. Go ahead, Robbie.
Okay, I just did some fast math. Okay, but like, we're getting 67 million, right? That's just a rough number per se. So if we're getting 67 million, I subtracted that, let's say 3,500 members. That's just a rough number. And that equals out to 19,000 something dollars when everybody would receive.
Yeah. If you did a straight even payout, that it'd be something like that. Yeah, I think yeah. Yeah. So, but then that would, and if. I put the number at 35 band members. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think I did that myself, and I was at 18, 19. So we're at the same number. But then that would assume that someone who's 80 today is getting the same amount as someone who's 5 today. So that would be one component of it. And the other component of it is if you did that, you'd be paying out everyone's compensation for those who have passed away equally to everyone alive today, which you can do, but that's what you'd be doing if you did it that way. Yeah. Yep. Yep. If you did an equal, you're going to take all the money, you're going to pay it all out 100% in cash, and everyone's going to get the same amount, whether you're any age. That's what it would look like.
So I have a question. So with the treaty itself, where did that $5 number come from to begin with?
It was something. So it was a relatively consistent treaty making process that Canada made throughout history. It's actually a chance to just mention another comment as well. So there are the pre-Confederation treaties, because Canada basically, once they started treaty making, they start going up Lake Superior and out west. So in the pre-Confederation treaties, they adopted their model, which became the precursor for the number treaties. And those are pre-Confederation, which meant that Canada didn't exist as it does today. It didn't have a tax base. So when they signed those treaties, they actually wrote into those treaties that this is your annuity payment. And because we can't increase it by revenue, we'll increase it as we grow the resource revenue of the land. That's why in the Robinson-Huron treaties, they got a different approach to settlement, because their treaty actually says something different. It was $4 for them, I believe. Theirs was $4, and then they increased it to $5. And it's actually, I believe it varies very slightly, but it kind of evolves as they move up Lake Superior out towards Manitoba. But starting in the numbered treaties is when they moved the $4 to the $5 amount. And they basically, they went through Treaty 1 to 8 relatively quickly at that point. In about a 30-year period, they did all the other treaties. So they just stuck to the roughly $5 model because that's what they had done elsewhere.
Just a quick comment while Rita asked that question. I did have a band member ask me back then, was the $5, did they compare it to the price of gold? Was gold used to get the $5 number, or how did they come up with the $5 number?
Yeah, when that comes up, and this is actually part of the argument that Canada will use as well. So there was a point in time that there was no inflation because the value of a dollar was tied to the price of gold. When they removed the gold standard, as they called it, and they moved on to the American dollar model that they have now, that's when inflation started. So what the argument meant was that the people that were negotiating these things in the beginning wouldn't have had a concept of inflation because they didn't have this arbitrary kind of dollar that grows with supply and demand as it does today. It was tied to the value of gold, and we didn't have inflation previously until we left the gold standard. So it's an important part of the history of this story, is that the concept today of inflation, it didn't exist in their minds at that time because it was tied to the gold standard.
All right, is that Patu? All I see is a hat.
I got
there's Patu.
Hello.
Where's the microphone? Okay,
It's over here.
go ahead, Rod.
I had my hand up for a
Hello.
little while.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, Rod, you had a question?
Comment more or less. I hate to be the devil's advocate. This is a compensation agreement that's being offered one-sidedly from Canada with very little input from the nation. We got to get that straight. There are options. The risky options, yes. Do we take a fast buck, or do we go to court and go all the way, which might come out 100 times more in value? It's hard to say. It really is. But at the end of the day, you guys need to know that there's options out there. At the time, just looking on Google, an ounce of gold was going for like 18 bucks. So 3 cousins could have put their money in and got that ounce of gold. That's worth over $3,000 now. An acre of land was going anywhere from historically $1 an acre up to 18 bucks an acre at that time. Now that same land on average in Alberta is $5,700. And these are things that Canada is not allowing in their negotiation table or their formula. We got to keep that in mind. Once we sign off an agreement like this, we have no more bargaining power for another 50 to 100 years if our treaties last that long. Yeah. That's really what you guys got to consider. And one of the things that really resonates and sticks in my head, I was at the ceremony and there was a person that said, our treaty was brought in with a pipe. Anytime we talk about any parts of that treaty, it should be done with a pipe. Maybe our ancestors will give us the right answers.
Yeah, and I'm not going to argue with any of that. He's right. There are options to go to court, and there are options to fight for other models. Some say, hey, we can go after what the Robinson Huron got, and a lot of lawyers tell me, hey, that would be a difficult fight. Some say it's possible. That's a risk for the nation to take on, and other nations are taking a different approach to arguing what the purchasing power was. And if you won in court a very different interpretation of purchasing power, if you said it's not inflation, but what was the basket of goods that you could have bought then and what's the value today, if you won that in court, it would be very different. Or you take that time, you fight your $1 million, you go to court for that, and you lose, and then this offer looked good. I mean, it's the situation, and it's a risk, but everything that the counselor mentioned just now is very true. It's a very serious decision. It is.
So my question is, how far are the population calculations back? Is it from the 2021 when you got the letter, or 2023 on your formulas?
Yeah, no, they go all the way back to 1899.
Yeah, but the membership to now? Like,
Yeah, from 1899 to 2025.
okay, so say a settlement or agreement, everybody votes yes, whatever. And then there's a decision to be made about the people that passed on and the newly born and stuff like that. When that money comes in, where does it go? Like on a nation, to what account? How is it looked at? Or is there going to be a committee that kind of like looks after that part?
Yeah, and again, it'll first depend on what you've decided to do with it. But if you decide that money is going to go into an account to be held for something to be done, then you would set up a legal trust account, which would have a board of trustees that would manage it and would govern it. So it would go to a trust account. I think either way, you would need a trust account, because you would need something. Even if you said you're paying out 100% at 19,000 each, it's still got to go to an account and have the rules for how that's going to go out. So you would set up an account, a trust account with a board of trustees that would govern it. So you'll have that either way. What you'll have to decide is what you set up as the rules for that money. Does it get invested to grow? Does it get invested to fight more legal cases? Does it get invested to pay out the interest in an annual annuity to everyone? You know, what option would you prefer? You'd have to decide that, but then that would be set out in the legal trust agreement and then would be governed by an independent board of trustees.
Any more questions?
It
will be age in general. That's we can't have the. Yeah. Yes. It is a good question, but that's going to be, that's going to be another headache. Do we want to muddy the waters that much? No, that's a good question. Like, is it his fault that it took 50 years? I don't know that, because That's our battle with the membership right now. That's a whole different. We have no say who Ottawa. The first step is Ottawa has to determine if you're a Driftpile band member, and that's our fight right now. We're fighting with Ottawa, saying we need more input on who you're determining to be a Driftpile band member. We only hear from them after they get their approval from Ottawa. Then they come to Driftpile because of our code 10. Then they apply for full band membership. So, but you're absolutely right. You know, he could have been in the Ottawa line for the last 20 years. Maybe he was entitled to be a full treaty, but Ottawa, for some other reason, said no until 2 months ago. So that's not really his fault. But that's definitely a good question. Don't get me wrong. Okay, Mike, do you have anything online? Okay, we'll send you the mic.
I just have a question on with your treaty annuity going back into ancestry. What actually is the benefit for the people besides money? What is the benefit besides money? Because here it's a negotiation for money. What are our people losing after that? Are we losing a treaty benefit once you take an agreement? Because I have grandchildren and I'll probably have great grandchildren whether I live to see it or not. But in that long run, you know, our grandchildren, great grandchildren shouldn't suffer for what today is wanting to be arranged and agreed on. Because, you know, one of these days they might ask whatever happened to the people that were treaty. That could be my great grandchild asking. Then we're going to say Chief Dwayne signed our treaty away. Or who are we going to blame? Because they want the money. Our people today suffer because addictions, alcoholism. We should be fighting for more program. We should service our people on reserve, off reserve, to better themselves, to take care of themselves. Our elders suffer in homes because they pay their own way. The nation doesn't give them 5 cents. They don't help them with nothing. Our people in medical facilities, they pay their own way. If the nation wants to help their people, they should help them in that way and not just throw money at them thinking they're going to shut them up. You know, because in the long run, we might lose benefits for our grandchildren.
I just want to make one comment. The way I understand it, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, this has nothing to do with treaty rights. It's the compensation for the $5 that they did not increase. It has nothing about land. It has anything about giving up any treaty rights. They owe us from 1899 to 2025. The only thing that's missing right now is we do want to get the treaty to $5 modernized, but again, that's going to be another battle in the future. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
And the language will be very clear in the agreement. Like, number one, I'm not bringing forward a document for anyone that's going to impact your treaty rights. Number two, if I tried to, I don't know if you've been in meetings with your council, but I don't know I'd make it out of that meeting alive if I did try to bring something like that forward. So that's not going to happen. The terminology is very, very clear. The words we use are missed escalations and missed delivery for 1899 to 2025 period. That's it. This does not abrogate or derogate from any other treaty rights. It has no impacts on anything. It's the missed escalation of the $5 and it's the missed delivery of payments when they were missed altogether, and it's the compensation for that, and it does not touch any other element. And we will be very, very carefully looking through every line of the agreement, and there's no chance that anything's getting signed that touches any other elements of treaty rights.
Perfect. So with that being said, then that means that if the onus is on the government and they're giving our CNC, including which affects us, so if they're giving them a structure that they cannot go here or go there, and this is it, and then this is the acceptance of, let's just hypothetically say, 67 million. So I'm thinking out loud, and the thought is this. So two things. When that treaty was signed, was my great ancestor drunk? Because come on, the government did negotiations and got our people drunk back then. Food for thought. Now the other one is the government doing a settlement? And I think this should be very clear in the paperwork, which would help eliminate any future disruption or fighting or argument. Help eliminate. I didn't say 100%. Now, when they do this negotiation with our CNC and affects us, are they including the deceased? Or are they including the people that are just living today? I think that would be a prudent information and should be in part of the settlement, because there's been the Indian day schools that when horrible things happen to our ancestors that passed, there's living people who are living today that they cannot access that money, even though it's within that timeline that these horrific things happened. And that was the timeline of the government that the lawyers are following. So let's help eliminate that. Hi.
Okay, Kayla, got a comment, question?
What? Hello. What about our children in Kale that are still fighting for the membership rights, and some of our band members that are under kinship and that with like foster homes, adoption? What about them?
As long as they're a band member, that's the way we understand they are going to be part of this group of the 67 million. The numbers they got were with generalists in our population. I think we're closer to 3,200 people. So that's kind of what the numbers they gave us.
Yeah. There will also, not to get too far ahead of it, to the settlement process, but when the settlement process comes, what will likely happen is there will be a call out to say, hey, there's a compensation coming for all members of Driftpile. If you're not a member yet and you feel you should be, reach out to this. You're going to have to give people an opportunity that may be improperly not recognized to come forward and try to get recognized, so we can make sure that we're not missing people that need to be captured, but also not adding people that shouldn't be on the list as well. But there will be a little bit of a process as part of the rollout for that.
All right, thanks. Mike, I'm sorry I've been trying to get back to you for 10 minutes. Can we take some online questions, please?
Yes, there was one question about if the money is going to be put in trust for the kids until they're 18.
He's asking if the one question was, is the money going to be put into trust until they turn 18? And then that's a good question. That's something we never worked on. Like, does the parents get the money now? That's something we have to definitely visit. Or do we keep it for 18? That's a good question. We're not there yet, but that's something we're working on.
I got a question for you guys there. This is called a Treaty 8 negotiation, or is it under Driftpile negotiation?
So they have offered every Treaty 8 nation the opportunity to negotiate. So as far as I know, it's 36 of the 38 Treaty 8 nations. Sorry, my math might be off, So they've all been offered to negotiate. So pretty much everyone's participating. One or two have either backed out or not participated, but everyone's doing their own settlement offer. But you have the opportunity, each nation, to negotiate your own settlement agreement, but Canada's trying to take the same mathematical formula for all. So that's when I said, when we were able to get those victories, to say, hey, take out deflation, take out your rounding errors, take out your incorrect band trust fund rates, it increased what everyone else is getting offered as well, because we fixed Canada's model, but everyone's negotiating separately, and some are doing it as a group. There's one that's a group of 10 to 12 from BC. Some are doing it in smaller groups, and a lot of nations are negotiating individually. That's everyone's choice.
Okay, I just want clarification on that, because I do believe a lot of people are looking at that 67 million as a whole just for Driftpile.
Yeah.
It's just for, this is Driftpile's.
This is
settlement
Driftpile
offer.
settlement. There is about 8 nations that are kind of ahead of everybody, and Driftpile is one of them. That's why I said earlier, they're watching us. There is 8 nations that started this process probably about 8 or 9 years ago, or maybe even longer. And it was Driftpile, Sucker Creek, Horse Lake. I think Swan River's in there too, eh? They were kind of ahead of the ball game, and that's why a lot of them are kind of looking to see how we make out. And we don't want to shortchange, first of all, ourselves, but we are going to be probably setting the standard for Treaty 8, the other nations that are right behind us.
And then they'll probably expand this to Treaty 2, Treaty 4, Treaty 6, Treaty 7. So it is a big precedent that we're potentially setting.
There's. I just want to know. I don't know if it's been mentioned. I kind of might have missed it already, but I've been asked when or if this agreement is signed, does leadership receive a signing bonus?
No.
Okay, so no. You guys over there, no.
All right. Any other questions? Mike, how are you making out? Are you good on your end? Okay, God, Laverne, Rita.
And just to actually go further on that, not only are council not taking a payout, they're actually paying you their funds to a certain extent, because part of the settlement offer is the $15 annuity and the $25 annuity to chiefs and headmen. So that's all factored in to get that number up to 67 million, and then that's paid out to you as well. So there's nothing that they would get that is above and beyond 1 penny what you would get in any scenario, and they're actually rolling out the chief and council increases to all of you as well as part of the settlement.
In regard, is this on? In regards to the interest rate on what they pay out for annuity payments and the people who are passed on, do they interest goes up on the interest every year, or is it just a flat rate base?
No, it compounds.
It's a compound interest.
Yeah.
So every year you're getting interest on interest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the formula. That's how, like, in those early years, like the 15 cents adds up.
It's just so that the other people understand that they're actually getting more bang for their buck as interest compounds per year.
Yeah.
The other one is, say you're $67 million. Is the interest rate going up on that, or is that just the offer and it's stuck at that offer?
Well, it would go up if you choose to take that and invest all of it. I mean, I have had nations ask me, what if we invest all of it? We pay out an annual annuity forever. The interest, you can do your math on a calculator, but the interest, if you got 6 or 7% a year on $67 million, would be quite a bit of money to roll out to your membership every year if you did do that. But you would only get interest on the 67 million if you invested it. Right now, what I think the direction it might be is to pay out people alive today and invest the rest. So if you did do that, then that would grow.
See, yeah, that's the other thing I was saying with the people who are passed away. Say you're averaging whatever 50 million, 20 or 17 million out to people who are passed away. Wouldn't it be a good idea in putting that 17 million into a trust fund and then paying annual payments to all the band members?
That's what a lot of nations are looking at. That would make logical
I think
sense
that
to
would
me as
make
well.
it fair, because our families are so big, and it would be just a scrap, and you'd create a lot of animosity amongst our own band members fighting for monies from our grandparents, aunties, etc. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think they would appreciate it if they were people fighting over their money.
And that's a good option. Like, you know, even that option, and we have thought about it, is possibly doing our own treaty payout. Maybe out of that 20 million, like you say, we lock it up, invest it. Then instead of getting $5, we pay everybody, just an example, 100 or 200. Yeah.
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 Yeah, you could, or you could pay out 90% of the interest, put a little bit back into principal, and it would just keep growing for forever. Yeah.
Definitely a good discussion for sure. That's we would have to, because we need some options. What we want to do, our game plan is hopefully you guys come up with a solution, you agree with it. We want to put the vote with the $67 million. So it's pure, it's clear. There's no confusion. You guys voted on it. This is how it's going to be paid out, and this is the amounts. We're hoping to do that, but again, that will be your guys' choice. But we are trying to give you guys the options. Information. We'll bring you guys some options, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, most likely the next engagement, I would get, in a perfect world, I think we're 2 months away from seeing if we can move them on the number. In a worst case, I think we're 4 months away from seeing if we can move them on the number, somewhere around that. Sometimes things go south, so it's not exactly, but whatever it is, I would imagine that then we're going to come back, say this is the number, and here's some more fleshed out options for settlement as the next discussion. And we could go further. There's some options. We could even put it out in a survey or something to the community, but we can talk about that. But for today is about getting you the information, and then you have the opportunity to talk about it, give your feedback to your council. We'll keep thinking about it with your feedback, and we'll try to come back to you with options when we're ready for the next discussion.
Okay, I got a question in the back there.
Okay. I was saying, what if we put a committee together for on reserve and off reserve and negotiate with you guys instead of you guys doing it by yourselves? Would that be an idea for you?
I don't know. We do have these companies that we're paying like big money to do some research. I'm not sure. We'll have to put some thought into that, Francis. See if it
Pardon?
would work.
I couldn't
We're
hear
not
you.
opposed against it. We would have to figure out how it's going to work.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would say from my perspective, like we are, to a degree, we are negotiating it together, because just from today, for example, you've given me about 7 ideas I've written down based on your feedback that I'm going to go back to the negotiation table with. So no idea is a bad idea. We're going to be coming back to you shortly. We'll hear more ideas, but everything that I've heard today and from everyone online that is like a suggestion or a comment for the negotiations, we're going to bring that forward.
Or one more hand somewhere up there.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you very much for that. That's fair enough. That's a fair comment. Absolutely.
I have a question here, Charge here. Now, with the 67, the way I look at it right now is with the 67 million, does that include for the people that had passed on already? Does that come into effect with that money, or is it another agreement that you have with the government on that basis?
No, it includes them.
Pardon?
This includes everyone that was part of Driftpile back to 1899.
Okay, so how much we'd have to find out how much they would put aside for the people that had passed on already then. And then that portion of that would be, say, maybe 50, 60 million. And where does that leave us guys, the ones that are still alive today?
Yeah, it's actually it's the smaller amount is for the past because your population has really gone, like I showed you those early years, it's 70, 100, 175, and you're 3,500 members today. So it's actually more of the payment goes to people in more modern history for you, but then there is some for people to 1899, but we'll have that number at the end of the day to tell you what's for people alive today and what's part of the compensation for ancestors past. We'll have that for you.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Who's that? Pat Pat?
I had gone asked to ask about the Bill C-38s. Do they conclude from trying to get back into band membership, or are they included already?
The Bill 331s, I
Yes.
think is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
So if they are full band members, again, they have to go to Ottawa. They got to do their thing. And if they're at our elders committee level and they're accepted as full band members, they would be. Even if they're accepted from Ottawa, that's what they're paying as well. Long as they're a treaty number, their treaty card says you're from Driftpile, that's what we're getting paid for in the whole 67 million. More question and we got to wrap up.
Oh, yeah. I do have a
Brittany.
I do have a question. You guys said maybe taking the government to court. Now, where would the fees come from to pay the court, to hire lawyers? If we don't settle on the 67,000, negotiation, to my understanding, is right now being had back and forth between both parties, correct?
Yeah.
And then if we decide not to take this offer and go to court, who's going to fund that? Where's the money going to come from?
Well, I can tell you the government's not going to pay you to take them to court. So they're not going to be paying for it. So where would the money come from? That would be something you'd have to. Yeah.
It would come from Driftpile Cree Nation if we were to go that route.
If we go individually, it will come from Driftpile First Nation. We'll have to find the money, but there are other options. Again, Treaty 8 collectively, with the help of BC nations, tried to do a group approach on this. There's strength in numbers, but for some reason, there's only like 8 of them left in that group. So you got to ask yourself, why? Why can't we work together? Why can't we share lawyers? Why can't we share an expense to do things right?
And Rod is right about that. We did host Driftpile and Loon River. We did host to try to get the other nations up to our level, but some of them, it's hard. It's hard to work with Treaty 8 nations. Some of them don't have the same drive or the same goals. We hosted a big event in Edmonton, and we only had we invited all the 24 nations of Treaty 8, and we probably had 10, 11 show up, and we told them this is where we are. Some nations haven't even started this process, and we said, if you want us to help, let me know. I'll come and do a workshop in your community. And no one ever took us up on our order. So yes, Treaty 8 is absolutely stronger in numbers, but right now it's a broken system. We've tried. I supported Treaty 8 since I became chief 9 years ago, and Treaty 8 hasn't moved. They're in the same spot as they are 9 years ago. So that's the other thing we got to consider. But just a little FYI on Treaty 8. Thank you.
Okay, I have another question. So do you think right now that the government's at its max with the formula? Are they going to change like 6 months from now? Is the offer going to decrease and the formula is going to stay the same? How many people in Treaty 8 have accepted this offer? I know you made a comment that it was presented to everybody in Treaty 8. Do you guys know how many people accepted it? And I imagine people probably have, because they've been having the same meetings that we're having today. They've had months ago.
Yeah, those are. Do you want to go first, Chief? Well, I can just say on your second question of where other nations are at, my understanding, and we've been unable to sit back at the negotiation table since the election, so this could have changed, was it's 3 nations have gone through the full ratification process and accepted. It was 2 for a long time, and I believe it's up to 3. And I've been told that there was 6 more at the time of the election that have said they're accepting the offer and had initiated the ratification process. So about 8 to 9 total at the time of the election had said that this offer is sufficient and had either fully been through the ratification or were initiating that process. And in terms of could a government take this and go backwards and reduce it? If I knew exactly what the government would do, then that'd be amazing. I can't know exactly. If it's a conservative government, I do think a conservative government's going to look at this and say, well, once we do this in Treaty 8, we have to do it all across the board. How many millions and billions of dollars would that be? I don't know for sure that a conservative government would voluntarily offer you a negotiation. I don't know. It's a real risk that they would change it. If it's a liberal government, likely I would expect them to continue on with what they've done here, but it's a new prime minister and it'll be a new cabinet. So potentially they could change course as well. I would think it's less likely if it's a liberal government that they would change course, especially with 9 nations going through the process. That would make it pretty difficult. So we're probably on safer ground there if you do want to take the offer, but nothing's certain, especially if it's a conservative government that was to come back. I have a hard time believing they're going to voluntarily do this, and you're not going to have to drag them kicking and screaming, personally.
Well, if another government comes in play, let's set a date. Vote.
All right, thanks, Yvonne. Any more questions? All right, well,
When's the next meeting?
let us do some little bit of more research on the next steps. Like I said, the government, we have to wait for elections anyways. Then they're going to take another 2 to 3 months to assign their cabinets. So we're still about 3 or 4 months away before we get a solid offer, and we're going to have to work on some details. So we have no date in mind yet. Got it. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll do a quick closing prayer. Thanks, boy. We appreciate all the input. John Henry left. Hank, you want to do a closing prayer, please?
Hi. Thanks, everybody. I guess I'll close on behalf of my cousin. He's left us. Kumona takamikama ubek kasi tigia nanas kumana no tumata sini makap yutap ngwa ko. Pwes makatim na. Hai.